Hey guys, Jake from 8020 Media here. Today we're doing a video on common problems with GM's 6.0 Vortec, which is the big brother to the 5.3 Vortec that we've done a number of videos on previously. The 6.0 Vortec is part of GM's small block LS-based engine series. It was produced from 1999 all the way up until 2020 when it was eventually phased out for the new 6.8 liter L8T gas engine. Throughout its nearly 20-year span, it was produced in two different generations from 1999 until 2020. The first generation lasted from 1999 all the way until 2007 and is typically referred to as the third gen Vortec engine. And the fourth gen went from 2007 all the way until 2020 when it was replaced by the 6.8 liter L8T gas engine. For the third generation of the engine, there were only two different variations and two different engine codes. The first one was LQ4, which is the most popular one, and then they built a high output version of the LQ4, which is known as the LQ9, more famously known as the Vortec Max engine. In 2007, they went ahead and switched to the fourth generation, and throughout the fourth generation, there were 8 different variations of the engine. However, the most popular ones in the US were the L76, which is also referred to as the second generation Vortec Max, the LY6, and the L96. Most of these engines were phased out by 2014 in your typical Silverado and Sierra 1500 trucks, as well as your 1500 series Suburbans and Tahoes. However, the L96 version, that was used through 2019 in the HD trucks and was used through 2020 in the Suburban 3500. Now, while there is 20 years of history and two different generations, the engines really are very similar throughout all of the years. There were really mostly minor changes between all of them. The second generation or Gen 4 engines got variable valve timing, flex fuel, a number of them got active fuel management. Outside of that, there were a few small different variations. The Gen 4 has a number of hybrid engine series as well as a number of international engines that were used in Holdens, but for the most part, these engines are very similar throughout their 20-year history. The biggest difference between the Gen 4s versus the Gen 3s, like I mentioned, is going to be the addition of active fuel management, which if you're familiar with GM, you know that tends to be a problem on just about any engine that has AFM. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into problems with the 6.0 Vortec. Fortunately, the list here is really short. These engines are built extremely well, they're extremely reliable, and they really don't have a whole lot of major engine problems or things that are noteworthy to mention, with the exception of AFM that we'll cover in a minute. But just ticking through the list of everything that we consider common is throttle body sensor failure, knock sensor failure. The exhaust manifolds, even on some of the later models, are known to cause leaks. And then the water pumps tend to fail a little bit earlier than you would expect. However, when we look at these common problems, they're really all pretty minor and nothing that give any concerns over the longevity of the engine. Really, the big or only noteworthy thing on these engines is with the Gen 4s and with active fuel management. Active fuel management has caused a number of issues with lifter failure, problems with the oil life monitoring system, excess oil consumption, and a combination of those above have also led to a number of catastrophic engine failures that require complete engine rebuilds or require a new engine to be swapped in. Generally speaking, when we look at the Gen 3s compared to the Gen 4s, the Gen 3s are a good bit more reliable just because they do not have active fuel management. With that being said, one of the more popular engine variations of the Gen 4 is the L96, which was used in the HD trucks as the gas alternative, and those actually do not not have active fuel management. And so those are extremely reliable engines, and the fact that it's been used for 20 years in HD trucks that are used frequently as work trucks, haulers, etc., and suffer very more strenuous duty cycles really speaks to the reliability and how well built the 6.0 Vortec is. These engines are capable of handling over 1,000 wheel horsepower, so when you look at the block, the heads, the internals, you're really not going to run into any issues with these that are not caused or AFM related throughout the lifespan of the vehicle. Typically speaking, lasting 300,000+ miles on these engines is pretty easy to get to. Now, to get to that point, you might run into a number of common maintenance problems like water pumps and sensor failures and other hoses and things like that. But the engine block and internals themselves are extremely strong and extremely reliable. Now, there are a couple other downsides to the 6.0 Vortec. One thing to mention is gas mileage. The 6.0 tends to get about 10 to 12 miles per gallon. Some owners claim they can get up to about 16, but expect low double digits, which is a good bit lower than the 5.3 Vortec. The second thing, which really is one of the main reasons that this ended up being phased out, was just a lack of power, especially compared to some of the newer trucks that were being produced in the late 2010s, as well as compared to the diesel engines. When we look at the 6.0 Vortec, when it initially debuted, it had 300 horsepower and it had 360 torque. In 2019, in the HD trucks, when it was eventually retired, it only had 360 horsepower and 382 torque. So over a 20-year history, they only got an extra 22 torque out of this engine. You have an HD 2500 or 3500 series truck that's pushing 380 torque, whereas you have someone like Ford who's putting a 3.5 EcoBoost into an F-150 and getting significantly more torque out of it than that. Especially when you compare it to an L5P, which in 2019 was pushing 975 torque. The engine is just a little bit underpowered for what you would expect to get out of a work truck. However, it lasted so long in those work trucks because of how reliable of an engine it was. It's an absolutely fantastic engine, especially if you're looking for a gas alternative to a diesel. It's probably one of the most reliable HD truck gas engines in my opinion. Anyways, that covers it for common problems with the 6.0 Vortec. If you appreciate all of our GM content, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for future videos.